before we move there, that's it, Mona. So before we move into the presentation, I want to remind you, keep yourself muted, and this will be recorded, which Mona just started, for that we can share it later on with you on the newsletter. So again, my pleasure is now to introduce Kendra Stein, our today's speaker. Kendra is a certified family and relationship coach through generational healing, as well as a somatic trauma therapy practitioner. As a coach and also a mother of 5, Kendra knows the joys and challenges that family relationships bring. Having led support groups and workshops for over 10 years, she truly enjoys providing a safe space where participants feel seen, heard, and empowered. Recently, Kendra focuses on personal coaching to help individuals uncover and heal their relational traumas in order to create inner harmony and healthy intimacy with themselves and others. And I personally have gained a lot of from Kendra's wisdom and experience and training, and also appreciate her openness to share her own story. So without further ado, let's welcome Kendra.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I do really love sharing all the things that I'm learning about somatic therapy and the body, and realizing more and more that we are all working exactly the way that we are designed to work. Even though we don't always feel like that, we feel sometimes maybe out of balance with ourselves. There's a reason for everything. And so today I'm going to go into a little bit more understanding about how our brains work and how we respond to our perceptions in the environment, and how we can help ourselves by taking care of our inner children, as well as how to apply this to our actual children. And so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is healing trauma in ourselves and our children. Okay. Okay. So our brain is constantly scanning the environment for danger. The way that we were designed is that we are always looking, our brain is constantly scanning without us even knowing, without us being able to be aware of it. We are picking up all these sensory clues in our environment that show if we are safe or if we are in danger. And when we find there's a threat in the environment, it is either a perceived threat or a real threat, but our brain doesn't really care which one. Our brain responds the same way to both things. So, for example, a veteran, right, who was in war, who experienced bombs, and that was a real danger. Now, when they're seeing fireworks, they don't just remember the war, they relive it. They are in it. They respond like the threat is real. So a really interesting fact is that we are only aware of 1% of all the sensory information that our brain is taking in at any given moment. 1%. That's it. If we start to be aware of more than, after 4%, it becomes more like autism, or where we're way too sensory overload. We can't handle it. It's too much information and we shut down. So really 1% is all we're actually aware of, but there's 99% of this sensory information that we are taking in our environment all around us, that's going into our brain, into our nervous system, and we're making decisions and responses based off of that information. So when there is a threat in our environment, we respond by going into fight, flight, freeze, right? And I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this before, right? We have a response that it's automatic. When our brain perceives threat, we automatically respond by doing one of these three things. We either fight, we get big energy and amp up and go move toward to get big and angry or push away or yell, or we have a that fight is big energy, or we have flight. We are out of there. We either physically remove ourselves, or we distract, or we check out, or we keep ourselves really busy. We can numb out through electronics or through overworking, or just staying really busy with tasks. That's a freeze response. Flight response. A freeze response is when our brain just kind of feels like it shuts off and we don't know what to say. We just kind of go blank. And on the outside, we're not moving, but on the inside, we're panicking and we're just kind of stuck and frozen. And so these three are the most common responses that our automatic nervous system goes into when we perceive a threat. Now, this was great for in the wild and back in the olden days when we needed these responses to stay alive, right? We had big predators. We had real threats to our safety that where it was helpful to freeze or to flee, right? We had to be able to respond right away, automatically. We didn't have time to slow down and think about, is this a real threat or is this just perceived, right? We actually had to respond automatically, quickly to keep ourselves alive. So that's why we have this response system. And nowadays, our threats look a little different, right? We don't have bears chasing us, but our brain actually still responds the same way. When it thinks that you might be in danger, right? It thinks you might be in danger. It goes into fight, flight, freeze, automatic response. So what are the threats in our environment that cause our brain to go into that fight, flight, freeze response? So when we can know what these threats are, we can understand ourselves a lot better. And why are we responding? Why are we panicking? Why are we getting upset? Right? And why are our children getting upset? Why are our children acting out in these unwanted behaviors? Well, there's probably a threat in their environment. So these four things: physical threat, perceptions in the unknown, incongruence in the environment, and unmet expectations. And we're going to go into each one. And just side note, all four of these threats were present during COVID for like 2 years. We were all in an environment that had every single one of these threats that caused us to, when we have these perceptions of these threats, we will be in our fight, flight, freeze response. So if you felt yourself a little bit more off during COVID, then give yourself some grace, because there was all four of these threats were going on all the time. Okay, so physical threat, right? This is when we have a threat to our physical safety, maybe our basic needs, food, shelter. We don't know where, we're going to live, or if we're going to make the rent, or maybe we have to move into a smaller place, or we can't afford food the way we used to. And finances, right? If we struggle with paying our bills, or wondering, if we're going paycheck to paycheck, or just our business is going under because of COVID, or, these things. And we, as an adult, will be into fight, flight, freeze response, right? If we are struggling with any of these things, and our children pick up on us as adults struggling with finances, right? Struggling with making the rent, or the food expenses going up. Whenever we complain or we make known around our children that we are struggling with some kind of with money issues or anything, our children have a sense of physical threat. Their body, that 99% of that information that they're taking in, feels danger. Uh-oh, mom and dad are struggling with bills. They're struggling with finances. They're struggling, are we going to have to move? Are we going to be okay? All of these things, they start going into a fight, flight, freeze response and panicking on the inside when they notice that, when they can perceive this physical threat in the home, and then they will act out because of their response system. Okay. So number 2, perceptions in the unknown. Okay, so the unknown, we all understand, we've all heard, right? The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear. The oldest and strongest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown. Now, why is that? Why do we fear the unknown? Well, it's because right when we have something that we don't know what's going to happen, it's an unknown, it's actually neutral data. There's no data yet in the future to go off of. So our brain actually goes into the past, into like our filing system, and it hyper focuses on all the things that did not go well. All the things that went bad and wrong in that line up with something that might be similar to what's coming, and it uses all of that information then to project of what might happen in the future. And this is just the way our brains work. That's the way that we were wired to keep us safe. And if you remember, if you saw the movie Inside Out, the fear, that's perfect. He's always calculating all the things that could happen and hyper focusing on all the negative. But that's actually just normal. That's the way our brains work, is to keep us safe. So we have to go back into our past and take all of that data, and we use it for projecting into the future. So if we have a lot of negative past experiences, we're going to be really afraid of what the future holds, and because that's what our brain has to go off of. And even they've done studies now with epigenetics and with how we pass on through our DNA this trauma, and from it being in unsafe environments, like for example, Holocaust survivors. They've done studies on grandchildren of Holocaust survivors that they have in their genetics just a sense of suspicion and not feeling safe in the world. Even if their environment is safe now, they've inherited that from their parents through trauma. And so they automatically have a more negative outlook, that the world is more unsafe. So we pass those things on to our children. When we don't feel safe, they pick that up. And then they learn that it's that we need to be afraid, that they internalize that, and we pass it on to them. So for kids, for example, transitions are an unknown. Just a transition, they don't know what's going to happen next. If we're like, okay, time to go, all of a sudden they could be thrown into fight, flight, freeze because they don't know what's going to happen. So one small thing that we can do to help with our children is to really be sensitive to the transitions. Give them a sense of what's going to come next. Maybe talk to them in the evening about what's going to happen the next day. What do we have coming up? Okay, we're going to leave in 5 minutes. Give them time to settle, to be okay with the transition, and be very gentle and understanding when a transition is difficult for them, because it's an unknown, is what it really is. So we want to do our best to try to make the unknown known, and that will help with ourselves and our children's nervous systems to calm down and feel safer. Okay. The next thing, incongruence. This one's a really interesting one. And it really made a big difference for me, because I know in my family, I grew up with, we don't talk about hard feelings. We don't talk about when people are feeling upset and why, and we just pretend like everything's fine. And so when there's incongruence in the house, it means when there's something that doesn't feel right, something that is off, something that's not adding up. And it could be, for example, I know in my family, me and my partner would fight a lot. We had a lot of negative interactions. And so it would be, we'd try to fight behind closed doors, but then come out and pretend like everything was fine. And remember that our brains are scanning constantly and picking up all of this information all the time, even if we're not aware of it. And so when I come out of the room and my eyes are a little bit sad, or a little bit watery, or they can tell mom's been crying, but I put on a smile as much as I can, the kids know that that smile doesn't look right. It looks fake. There's something off, mom. And they don't even know why, right? They can only really, they're aware of 1%, but their body is telling them 99% of this information. All of mom's, all of her mannerisms and her nonverbal cues and her facial, we can see something's wrong, but we're not talking about it. So it feels off and incongruent. And guess what? That's again an unknown. Then their brain goes, well, what is wrong? What could be? And it's all these unknown factors, right? And when there's secrets that the parents aren't telling, maybe a family member is sick and they're worried, but they're not sharing with the child. Or maybe their finances are stressful and there's something they might to move soon and they're trying to keep it a secret, but not telling the kids know, they pick it up. You can't hide that from their nervous systems, right? They know something is going on. And so, if the fake expressions, the fake smiles, the let's just pretend everything's fine, it causes stress. It's a threat to our children. It's a threat to us if our spouse is doing it to us. We can tell something's off. We can just tell, we just know, because we're picking up all of the sensory information that we're not even aware that we're picking up. So like an example is an adopted child. A child that's adopted, their body knows that they did not come from that family. And if you don't tell the child there's just something off, they just know something's not right. And they grow up with this incongruence and always being in their fight, flight, freeze response system, always being in that kind of activated, unsafe feeling and off until when they find out. They've done a lot of research on this. When the child finds out that they've been adopted, everything makes sense. And they go, oh, that's why I've been feeling like something just wasn't right, right? Their awareness, they didn't really know, but their body knew. It felt off. So it's so important that we don't hide these things from our kids. Now we're appropriate, right? We don't tell them things that are not appropriate for them to know, but we can say, there is something stressful going on right now. I am a little bit stressed out right now. You know what? Mommy and daddy, we're having we're trying to work things out. And sometimes in relationships, it's okay to be sad. It's okay that this is normal and I'm okay. Even though I'm sad, even though me and daddy are kind of having an argument right now, but we're going to be okay. It's normal to have sad emotions. It's normal to get angry. It's normal, right? We're not always happy, and that's okay. Letting them feel safe in the negative feeling, that you have a negative feeling, but you're not overwhelmed by it. It doesn't mean really bad things are going to happen. It's just a normal part of life. And then leaning into, is there anything you're feeling sad about? Does seeing mommy feel sad make you sad? And you lean in to let them share their sad feeling. Because as soon as we bring it out into the light, now it's not an unknown, it's a known. And then we can lean into it and do something about it. So it's so important not to hide behind the mask of fakeness and letting things just pretending like everything's fine, because the kids know, we know. Okay, the last one, shoulds and unmet expectations. This is a huge one. I know it was for me in my life. It was huge, right? That I had this high standard I was trying to live up to, and I just couldn't live up to it. Who I was not who I thought I should be. I thought I should be this perfect child. I shouldn't make mistakes. If I had desires or things that I wanted to talk about that weren't allowed in my family, then I felt like I wasn't allowed to be me. I wasn't okay. Right. And so it felt like something about me wasn't right. Something about me was wrong. And I had abuse as a child. Actually, even I was 14 years old and there was some abuse from a neighbor, and I did not bring it up to my parents. I was terrified to bring it up to them because we didn't talk about sex. We didn't talk about things like that, boundaries and how to say no to adults and all these things. I didn't know any of that. And it was terrifying. All I knew is it was bad. So I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So it went on for a long time because there was no safe space to talk about things when it felt like that was not, it wasn't allowed. I just had to be good, and that was it. And that was the only feelings that were allowed. And so I wasn't allowed to be me. And something about me was wrong or bad. And so that can be a part of it. Also being, having really a big weight as a child, feeling like there's all these expectations on me to be a certain way or to achieve a certain goal, and trying to fill that expectation to receive love from my parent, right? That's a big burden to a child, and they will that's a threat to them. So they'll be in their fight, flight, freeze response, acting out in those behaviors because they don't feel safe. And now we do this to ourselves, right? As a child, we learn that that's normal. So what do? As an adult, we repeat. We do it to ourselves, right? We create our own environment where we put ourselves under all this pressure and all this expectation that we should be a certain way. We should do this and we should do that, and we're not doing. And oh my gosh, of course we're stressed. We're doing it to ourselves. So if you notice the shoulds in your environment are too big and they're too prevalent, let's take a step back and let go and allow ourselves and our children to just be, and to let the uncomfortable feelings, the things that we don't want to talk about, let's talk about them. Let's bring them into awareness that, hey, it's okay if you have, weird questions, or if you want to talk about things that are uncomfortable. Let's be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Let's let the dishes go. We can do homework the next night. Let's just be together in this moment, right? Really taking a step back, letting go. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a moment, and I would love to take a breath. That was a lot of information. And what I would love is if you could take a few moments with your pen and paper. We're going to give about 5 minutes to write about one of these threats that really stood out to you, that you notice in your own environment. And you can do this for you and or your children, noticing what threat might be in their environment, what threat is in your environment that really stood out to you, and which of the responses, fight, flight, freeze, you respond with. What is your go-to response? When you have expectations that are too high, how do you respond? Do you just zone out and check out and watch Netflix because it's too much and overwhelming? Do you just maybe amp up and get angry at people and start kind of attacking those around you and getting irritable and upset because there's too many things going on? What do you notice is your response to what threat? So just pick one, and you may notice all of them, but just pick the one that's most prevalent and how you respond to it. And maybe how your child might be responding to that threat. And then we have a little bit more of a presentation after that. But first, I just want to take these few minutes and just journal about that. And then I'll ask for a volunteer to share. Okay. I think we'll do 1 more minute. And you can feel free to, write more later, take this prompt with you. Yes, surely. Just 30 more seconds. Everyone can wrap it up. And then we'll have Shirley share. Okay, Shirley, when you're ready.
Oh, good. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for this. Yeah, my concern, and I didn't want to admit on that survey, which I could see, but I just couldn't calculate things. My stress is real high today. And I thought, well, I'm unusual because everybody said, no, their stress is moderate. But I have high blood pressure. I've done everything I can. My doctors just throw their arms up in the air and say, we can't help you anymore. But when I was more of a teenager, maybe 15, 16, and my brother's 1 year older than me, we were always alone when this happened. And always in the same spot in our home. I would see him get angry. I could see the anger enter into him. And he would come up to me with these eyes on fire and this rage in his face. And he would grab my arm and he would beat my arm so hard, all over my shoulder, all over my arm.
Wow.
And I would scream and yell, try and get away. I never could. And it happened so many times. And I'd always forget. My mother and I were close, but I would always forget to tell her about this. And now, and I've told my doctors this, I've been in therapy for it. You know, when I get my blood pressure taken, I'm told just breathe and relax and all this mumbo jumbo you hear about that. Just relax. Well, I can't. And even if they tell me, don't think about what happened, it still happens. The minute that cuff goes around my arm, I panic. And I have cataract surgery coming up in March. One eye, March 5th, the other eye, March 19th. And I'm told if my blood pressure is too high, they will cancel surgery.
Wow.
And I'm having trouble seeing and, driving. And I really want the surgery. And I really need help with the fear, with the anxiety, the panic. And yeah, I'm on some pills for panic and emotional strength, but it's an issue. Kendra, you know what's happened to me. You're part of the Denver church. And I'm not going to get into that, but I really need help with this blood pressure issue. I want to go forward with the surgery. And the lady I talked to yesterday in my eye doctor's office said, oh, just don't put it out there. Just be happy. And that makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense. It didn't make any sense at all to me. I'd like to know responses.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, it's two things that I would say. And one is I can teach you one really quick technique that I use when I have actually PTSD from the dentist and like really bad traumatic experiences. And I still had to go in and get some work done. And I start to have a panic attack. And then just a couple weeks ago, right? I did started to have a panic attack and I did a small version of tapping that works really well for in the moment. If your blood pressure is going or if you're about to panic, then it really will help you calm down in the moment. And so for me, tapping, it can be anywhere on your body. It doesn't have to be the specific places. I was folding my arms, laying down, about to totally freak out, and I started just tapping right here on my arm. And then the key is to, and I said it in my head, I didn't even have to say it out loud. I said, even though I'm terrified, I love and accept myself. and I'm tapping even, and I'm about to panic. I've got a tear rolling down my heartbeat. I'm sweating, I'm shaking. I'm literally about to just completely freak out. And the dentist is like, and so I started tapping and I said, and in my head, even though I'm terrified, I love and accept myself. Even though I'm terrified, I love and accept myself. And I just did that maybe 3 to 5 times. And immediately, boom, my whole body. It's like, so the tapping, the reason why we do this is because your whole body has the energy, and it's like a big like water balloon about to burst, but the tapping puts a little pinhole in it and allows the escape of the energy so that you can like that. And then we're saying, even though I'm whatever the emotion is, overwhelmed, upset, afraid, right? That we're putting it into words, we're putting it outside, we're making the implicit explicit. We're making it known, we're labeling the feeling. It's so powerful to label the feeling and then saying, I love and accept myself, we're actually generating the energy, the electricity that we need to go from our panic, fight, flight, freeze to our prefrontal cortex. We're actually putting ourselves back online, getting our logical thinking brain back online, and then we're integrating that feeling of panic into the safety of our present moment. This works when our present moment is safe. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that too in the second part of the perceptions and having the perceived threat and the actual threat and kind of dealing with each one. So one thing is when it's a perceived threat, you can do some kind of tool like breathing, grounding, take a little walk, shake it out, tapping, to help yourself come back to some balance where you're not just in panic mode. And then you get to decide, is this a real threat or is it just a perception of a threat? And so for you, where you would want to help teach yourself that I'm okay, I'm safe right now. That was from the past. This environment is safe now, but you've got to do something to get your prefrontal cortex back online. Otherwise, it doesn't work to just tell yourself, I'm safe. Nope, your body doesn't believe it. So that's where the tapping and the even though I'm afraid, I love and accept myself can help your body feel safe. So you calm down in the moment.
I see. I see. I haven't been impressed with tapping.
Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't work for me if I try to do the whole full-blown thing because it's too much when I'm panicking. I can't just give me 20 minutes to do a tapping session. But if I just say those words in my head and I tap anywhere on my body, it works really well. And I've had several clients also testify to the same thing. Just the hardest part is just trying it because it seems too simple. So I would, if you haven't tried it in that way, I would give it another try. And if it doesn't work, then there is other somatic tools too, that if you want to message me later, we'll put my email in the chat and you can, I'll help you out with that because there's an array of tools and it's kind of like tools in the toolbox. Which one works best for you?
I was hoping you'd say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I look forward to your email. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
so much.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was part of I was going to include that a little bit later anyway, so that was perfect, Shirley, because I was able to bring it up now. It was perfectly relevant. So
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Beautiful. So I'm going to just go into the second part, and then we'll have another chance for a little prompt and a share. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. So I love this lady. I use her for a lot of my slides from other presentations. She's very animated. What do we do? So, okay, I've got all these threats in my environment. What do I do about it? So the first thing we do is breathe. Oh, breathing, let me tell you, it does wonders. And it has taken me so long to be comfortable enough with just breathing. There was some block I had around that's too easy, that's not going to work, but I promise you it works. And the secret is to breathe out longer than you breathe in. So your out breath should be longer, like that, than your in breath. And you're actually, by doing that, you're telling your sympathetic, your fight, flight, freeze nervous system that you are safe. You cannot run away from a bear if you are breathing out long exhales. It doesn't compute. So you're overriding your nervous system. By breathing out, you're overriding. And just like the tapping, you're getting that that energy, the electricity, the neural pathways reconnected to your prefrontal cortex. So it gets us out of that fight, flight, freeze and reconnected where we can think logically and reasonably. Now, I do this with my whole family now. All my kids know about breathing and they help me. So the other day, I was having a really dangerous car issue on the freeway and I was panicking and I was cursing, just like I felt like I was going to get an accident. I was terrified. And my little daughter, my 8-year-old from the back seat goes, "Mom, just breathe." Because it's part of our family culture. And so I was like, "You're right. Okay, I can breathe." Right. And then she was breathing. We were all kind of breathing together. So we didn't panic. And I was able to just pull over and get some help. And it was so precious because she knows, because we've talked about it and practiced it, that breathing is really helpful. So as a family now, it's normal for us to take a breath, that we have put it into our culture as we need to respond right away to this panic. We can take a breath and find support. The feeling is not going to overwhelm us if we take a moment to pause and breathe. Okay. Oops. All right. So breathing is how we find safety. Breathing, we are literally telling our nervous system we are safe when we breathe. That's what we're doing. And we have to do it, that long, slow out breath. And that's how we regulate that nervous system. We regulate the emotions in our body, and then we can feel safe. And so regulating is really, it's moving toward the feeling. It's leaning into the feeling, not running away from it, right? Not freezing or not getting angry and pushing it away or shaming it away or like distracting ourselves, numbing out. We're actually leaning in to the feeling. And curiosity is the first thing we want to do when we have enough of that brain space. Then our prefrontal cortex comes back online. Let's get curious about the feeling, whether it's our own feeling inside of us or it's a feeling inside one of our children. Hey, what's going on? I've noticed that you're, feeling a little upset. You're yelling at your brother. That's not like you. What's going on? We lean in. And if we aren't able to do it for our own emotions, then we cannot do it for our children, which is why we learn this process for ourselves first. When we have a feeling, then we need to take a breath and lean in. Okay, what is that feeling? What is that feeling? I'm okay. It's just a feeling, right? We take a breath, we lean in, we move toward. We're curious. And then when we learn how to do that for ourselves, we can do it for our children when they have a feeling. Okay, and so then once we've calmed down, we have some access to our prefrontal cortex, then we can see, is this a real or a perceived threat? Are we really in danger in this moment? Is there a threat in our environment? And now we get to have we have more information now. What are the 4 threats? Which one of these threats is in our environment currently? Does my physical safety, is that a threat to me right now? Am I acting really stressed out and irritated because I have something that's threatening my well-being, my safety, right? Or is there some unknown that's coming up that I'm really stressed about? Right? And for my children, right? Is there some incongruence in the environment for them that I'm pretending everything's fine? There's really something going on. Are they picking up on that? Is there a should? And do I hear a lot of shoulds in my mind? I should be doing this. Am I telling my children, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, right? Which ones are real? Which ones are in our control? is the next question. Which things do we actually have control over? How can we take a step in that direction to help ourselves or our children feel safe by removing the threat in the environment? Right? So if there's incongruence, let's talk about it. Let's make the unknown known. If there's some big unknown that we're all facing about maybe moving or something that's coming up and we don't know what we're going to do and it's stressful, let's take a step back and notice, are we saying that out? Are we sharing our anxiety with the kids? How can we help them feel safe? How can we also take a step back and what can we do in this moment that's in our control? Right? Maybe we look for more houses. Maybe we figure out, we get a real estate agent. We have a plan. We do, there's something where we can take a forward step to help us feel safer so that we don't continue to be in that fight, flight, freeze response as there's this big unknown coming up. We can also be curious about maybe it's, coming from something in the past. So first we figure out what's actually going on in our environment that's real. Based on those threats, what's in our control and what can we do to take an action step to help ourselves or our child feel safe? Okay, then what if it's a perceived threat, right? What if it's just perceived? It's not real. What if our environment is safe, but we're still feeling panicked? Then it means it's coming from a younger part of us. It means that it's based off of like with Shirley that she was sharing, right? She's maybe safe in the environment now. It's just a blood pressure cuff, but her inner child is terrified. Her inner child is perceiving that as a threat to her safety. And she is stuck in that state and terrified. And we don't remember trauma, we relive it. That child is there in that moment. Shirley is the child. She feels the terror of that child in that moment. And the only way we can help that inner child is to guide her to come with us to the present moment. By understanding where that's coming from and saying, hey, we're not that little girl anymore. It's okay. I've got you. It's safe now. I'm here. And if we can do that for our inner child, then they can feel safe in the moment. Okay. And our inner child and our actual children, right? As a parent, we need to offer three things: nurturance, guidance, and protection. These are the three most important things that we offer as a parent, that children need from us as parents: nurturance, guidance, and protection. So when our inner child is panicking, when our inner child is feeling angry or upset or afraid or sad, we want to pause and notice, take a breath, get curious, and say, what does my inner child need right now? What do I need? What am I lacking? Am I lacking nurturance? Do I need support and comfort? Do I need some compassion right now? Do I need to take care of myself, do some self-care? Do I need guidance? Am I not sure what to do about my future? Do I have a decision I'm not sure how to make? Do I need some support there from a mentor or another wise adult in my life that can help me with some guidance? Maybe I need to just tap into my own wisdom and find the guidance from within myself. Do I need protection? Is there something happening that part of me doesn't feel safe? That little child in me is terrified. She needs protection. She needs to know she's going to be safe. And we need to give this to our actual children too. Your children need these things too, right? So when we see our child panicking, we see our child acting out and being upset and not acting like their normal self, then instead of focusing on the behavior, we go deep into the symptom of what is the threats, what do they need to feel safe? Do they need nurturance, guidance, or protection from me as their parent? So both your inner children and your actual children will act out in their fight, flight, freeze response if they don't feel safe. It's an automatic response. So many times we get caught up in, if our child acts out and is mean or is disrespectful or rude, we look at the behavior and say, what a rude child. How rude, how disrespectful. Instead of realizing that they're only acting out in those behaviors because they are feeling unsafe. There's something off and they don't know how to regulate themselves. They need the parent to help them feel regulated, to feel safe. And so what the really fascinating thing that I learned was that the child will make the caregiver feel what they are feeling through their acting out behavior. So if you don't know how your child feels, if you're wondering how they're feeling, notice when they act out in their way, when they hurt someone else, they're actually hurting inside. If they're making a huge mess and everything's chaotic and you feel out of control, and then there's like, there's just a mess everywhere and I can't contain it, that's how they feel inside. They're making you feel how they feel. Children are designed to do this. And you can think about it in the simple phrase of hurt people hurt people. Okay, I have this story of my teenage son. He was about 14 and he was being mean and hurting with his words. He was just kind of being disrespectful and mean to his sibling, poking them and just hurting them. And I said, what the heck? Like, Brian Daniel, stop. What are you doing? And he turns to me and then says some mean or rude comment, disrespectful comment to me. And my first response was to fight response of how dare you, push back, get big energy. But I've been working on myself a lot and I took a breath and calmed myself down so that I didn't just react right away. And then I took him aside and I said, hey, Ryan Daniel, that, you were hurting your sister and that comment you made to me was a hurtful comment. And so I said, but I know that hurt people. So there might be some kind of hurt inside of you. And he started crying. It just opened his heart and he just started pouring out his tears. And he's a 14-year-old boy. And he was just saying at school, he was having this problem with this kid who was being really mean to him. And he had this hurt inside of him. And that's why he was acting out. It wasn't because he was a disrespectful kid, because he was rude and bad brother and bad son, that my normal old response system would be to blame and shame and focus on the behavior. But it's not the behavior, it was what was underneath that was important. So I had curiosity. And I could have empathy, feeling that hurt feeling, how I felt disrespected. I felt hurt. I was like, ooh, ouch. Look how he's acting. He's hurting people. He must be hurt inside. I had the most profound and deep experience with this experience with my ex, with I was married for 21 years, but there was a very abusive and violent at times relationship that caused a lot of fear inside of me. And I realized through this that that David was just acting in a way to help me feel how he felt inside. He was terrified all the time. He was terrified. And I felt that terror in the way he treated me. It helped me feel how he feels. And I could forgive that behavior. I could have empathy for that because I saw his hurt little boy inside who felt fear all the time. And he didn't know what to do with it. So he was in his fight response all the time, always in fight. And it was because he was afraid and he made me feel the way he felt. So I could forgive that behavior because that was the only way that he knew how. That was automatic. He wasn't trying to be mean. He wasn't intentionally trying to be like hurting everybody, but he was hurt inside. It's an acting out behavior that he never learned how to do in any other way. And so actually now he has done a lot of work on that fear, and he's been able to really heal that inner child, to be not afraid all the time. He's been giving his inner child protection and nurturance and guidance so that he is now a safe space for me. And actually, I've been able to feel safety around him too. And so hurt people need love. Hurt people need forgiveness and compassion and understanding. And it takes that pausing and recognizing anything you're feeling because of their behavior, that's exactly how they feel inside. And we want to stop and lean in and get curious and see if we can get underneath to see what's causing that pain. And I have one more story of just testifying to the work that me and then David have been doing on our own and then also together. That the other day I asked for a safe conversation for him because he had done something that was mean, and I wanted to bring it up. And throughout the course of my 20 years of being married, we had basically only unsafe conversations. Conversations were not safe at all. And so as I was driving over to his house, my whole body was feeling terrified, shaky, sweaty, just like totally panicking. And I knew I was safe in there was no threat in my environment that was real. It was all perception. It was all from my past negative experiences. So I continued and I went over and we sat on the couch, and then in safe conversation, you need to have eye contact. And so I looked up to have eye contact, and I burst into tears and I said, I am just so terrified. And I knew why. So I actually was able to be with my feeling of terror. It didn't overwhelm me. I was curious. I was like, wow, look how scared I am. Look at all this fear that gets to come up right now, that gets to be seen and felt. And I had my David was there, and he was like, hey, can I do anything? Do you need anything? And I said, no, I'm good. I just need to let the feeling out. And I just cried, and it only took about 1 minute. That's the beautiful thing. Feelings don't last forever. If you really allow them to be felt in a safe space, you integrate the feeling. So when we feel the feeling, it doesn't just heal it by feeling it. We have to feel it and integrate it into safety, into a safe space. And that's where the loving parent, the loving presence comes in, where it can be our own adult self to our own terrified inner child, or we as the adult for our child, or as partners, that we can be there for each other. And so David had done enough work on himself that he wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't panicked or terrified about my terror because he had worked on his own so he could hold the space. And so I just let the feeling go. I just cried and felt it. And then, I was better. And because I knew there was no threat in my actual environment, it was just perceived, so I could hold the space for that little part of me, that younger part of me that was so scared. And then it was better. And then we could have our conversation. And then it was great. And we had a really good connecting conversation. I felt seen and heard, and Dave could own his bad behavior, that he did without feeling shame about it. And then we could reconnect. So it was so amazing, this experience of doing the inner child healing on myself and him doing his work. And so us being able to find healing and connection together now in this moment, after so many years of not being able to do that. It's just a really beautiful way to live. And now doing it with my children as well, being able to hold space for their feelings when they get upset, and not judging the behavior, but understanding that there must be some hurt happening so that I can lean into the feeling and be with it and them. Okay. And that's what we need for healing trauma within ourselves and our children. So that's what I have for today for my presentation. And I just want to do one more prompt. So I would love for you to write down a feeling that you notice within yourself that goes along with that fight, flight, freeze, right? There's some big feeling that you've been having. And if you can't think of one in you, maybe one of your children. And write about where that feeling might be coming from and what it needs. Does that part of you need nurturance, guidance, or protection? And is it you or one of your children? Do they need nurturance, guidance, or protection? What's the feeling or what's the behavior, if that's easier? What's the behavior? If they're being mean to their sibling all the time, or if they're throwing tantrums every day, or if they're just kind of, maybe they're depressed, they're angry, whatever, if it's a feeling or a behavior, notice it. Nothing's wrong with them. Their body is working exactly the way that it should. It's telling you something. Same with you. When you are feeling off, there's something there. So just take maybe 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and just write what the feeling or behavior is within you or your child. And out of those three, nurturance, guidance, or protection, what might it need from you? And then even one step further, if you can, or for later, what would that look like? What is one action step you could take in that direction? Okay, about 1 more minute, we'll finish up. Okay. So I would love to have another volunteer to share what they wrote. Who would be willing to just share a little bit about the behavior, the feeling they noticed in themselves or their child, and what they might need? Blondine? Can you unmute? There you go. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kendra, for this presentation. Really, it's really helped me with just an event that happened this morning with my husband. We, for some reason, he really complains that I'm not speaking loud enough.
Mm.
And I got very upset and angry when he said that. And I realized I felt that, there's something wrong with me, and that my being attacked, and so that's, when I was thinking recently, why did I feel that? Because it was really out of proportion with what he said,
Mm.
and so that's the feeling I had, and I realized, I really need to be reassured that I'm just fine as I am,
Mm-hmm.
even if
Mm-hmm.
I speak too softly and he cannot hear me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's anyway, that's the little event that happened. So for me, the need was to be more nurtured in the knowledge that I am fine as I am,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's
And you know what's so interesting, Blondine? Your husband is just making you feel the way that he feels. So he feels like there's something wrong with him because he can't hear you. And instead of feeling how that, because that's a hard feeling, that doesn't feel good, right? He's projecting it onto you. He's saying, well, you need to speak up. That's his fight response. He's fighting that feeling. But actually, he feels like there's something wrong with him. And that's why he makes you feel like that. Now that doesn't feel good on your end. Now you can have empathy for, oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yeah, he feels that way too.
That's not what I said to him. I said, you need your heels checked. So that was not a very good conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, and
people, yeah, it is so, it's so true. Yeah.
mm-hmm, yeah,
Okay.
and that's a good point too. Pam put in the chat, does your husband feel unheard? Yeah, yeah, good one. Mm-hmm. That's where we go into the body often reflects, right? Things like if we have shoulder pain, if we have tension, it means we're carrying a burden, right? If we feel like our throat gets tight, we don't have a voice, we can't speak. If our like feeling unheard, we can't hear, we don't, right? We're not feeling heard or understanding, things like that, we can tie in to the needs underneath. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Blondine. That was wonderful. And I think we have time for, well, maybe we should just save time for questions. So let's see. We have, I think, about 5 minutes left. If anyone has a question or a comment about the presentation, we can have about 5 minutes for that, and then we'll have the ending, wrap it up. Donna? Mm-hmm.
I appreciated how I felt you simplified things that have been rambling around in my brain.
Mhm.
And you also kind of tied them together for me. My
Mm.
inner child and a reflection on that and the other person's, as well as the actual child that I might be relating to, like a grandchild or an adult child.
Mhm.
And seeing it in terms of parental heart, the nurturing, the protection, the guidance,
Mhm.
empathy. And I just, for me, it was like, wow.
Mhm. Mhm.
I go to a panic place a lot, and so do other people around me sometimes, but especially myself. And I was realizing it's usually because of unreal self expectations, and that I just have to self talk it away. So that's myself giving myself guidance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Very good. Giving yourself guidance. And so, and then, yeah, there was a question about self-talk interference. So the same thing you were saying, self-talk, actually, sometimes we think that it's us when we hear the critical voices. You should be doing this. You should be doing that, right? This kind of critic inside of us. It's actually, that's a part of us. It's not who we are. We can be separate from even that voice. Anything that is not compassionate and curious and calm, right? Those are all, the opposite of that is our parts. The adult, the wise adult self within us feels safe. That's our prefrontal cortex. We feel confident, we're convicted, we're courageous, we're calm, we're curious, we're creative, all the C words. That is when we are feeling safe. That's our wise adult self. And we can always connect to that if we create enough safety in our environment. So anything that's not that, anything that's being harsh or critical or worried or stressed or fear, all those are just parts of us. That's, we can separate from those things. We can separate from any of those other, and they're usually coming from a younger part of us, right? And that harshness, that harsh voice, the self-talk of the shoulds often is a part of us that's trying to protect us from something. It's trying to protect a more vulnerable part of feeling like we're not enough, so that we go, oh, well, then you should be doing this and this and this, and then that way you're going to be enough, right? So it's trying to protect. It's just an immature way to do it. It's an immature, younger part of us. So we can separate even from that harshness, from that voice, and connect to our safety, and then lean in and be curious. Why am I so harsh on myself? Where did that voice come from? Where did I learn that? Right? And probably from our childhood. That's probably where we can connect it to. And then we have compassion for that part of us. And that's how we integrate. Yeah, Lisa?
So what would you say? I had three grandkids next to me, 3 boys, 5 and under, and they just love to, like tease each other all the time, and somebody cries, and it's like ongoing all the time, and like I don't know what, and sometimes it's really, really hard because sometimes they can really mean to each other, but they love each other. So what would you say? Because it's so hard. You try to really understand them, but they don't stop that behavior.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And a lot of times, so what do those boys need? Most likely guidance, right? Because children need to be guided to having limits of, they're not, being mean and hurting other people is not okay. But we often try to teach our children those limits or rules or give guidance when they're dysregulated, when they're in the moment, when they're being mean and acting out. They're not on, they barely have their prefrontal cortex anyways, right? They're like, they barely have any there. And we're asking them to think logically, to understand what we're saying. They can't do it. When they're acting out, that's from their automatic sympathetic nervous system. They're in a fight response. So they actually don't have access. They can't take in any guidance that you're giving because they're offline. So what we make the mistake as parents of trying to correct their behavior in the moment when they're acting out, and it doesn't go in. So taking the separating them, right? Controlling the situation, being like, okay, everyone take a break. Let's all take a break. And then when they're regulated, feeling calm, then you can talk to them. Kids are so smart. They'll get it. They will understand if you take the time to be with them when they're feeling safe and say, hey, how does it feel? And this is when you teach empathy, right? How does it feel when your brother hurts you? Oh, it doesn't feel so good. Yeah. So, and when you hurt him, that's how he feels, right? And so when you hurt other people, they'll hurt you back, right? You teach them this kind of, the hurt goes around, right? We're hurting, and so we don't want to hurt other people because it doesn't feel good for us. We don't feel good when we hurt other people, right? So you're just giving them the lesson, but you can't do it in the moment. You have to take time to be, when they're regulated, they can internalize it. And then the second thing is practicing regulating yourself in front of them, because children are just modeling what they see. They're modeling the behavior that they see around them, whether it's at school or whether it's from the parents or whatever. They're modeling the behavior. So if you show the child what it looks like to breathe, to apologize, to be accountable for, you're right, I said that mean thing, I'm really sorry, that goes a long way. It does actually has a much bigger impact than trying to teach them how to say, you should say sorry, you should do this. You're just making them more dysregulated, right? So, but if you show them what it's like when you mess up and you go to your child and say, you know what, I yelled at you earlier, I'm really sorry about that. And that you're okay still. You don't shame yourself. Oh, mommy's such a bad mom. And this. You just say, I did that. I'm really sorry. And you show them what it means to repair. And so one last quick thing, I know we're out of time, but one really cool thing that I learned recently that was helpful for me is that in relationships, you are allowed to get it wrong 70% of the time. You're allowed to miss your partner or your child, whoever you're in relationship with. You're allowed to mess up or be mean or be, dysregulated, as long as there is repair. That means you only have to get it right 30% of the time to be attuned, to be aware, to say the right thing and do the right thing in that right moment, right? 30% of the time. But 70% of the time, we're going to mess up. We're not going to do it right. We're going to yell. We're going to get dysregulated. We're going to be checked out. We're going to be off. But it's okay as long as we take time to repair. And that just means saying sorry for what we did. And hey, mom messed up. I'm really sorry about that, right? Repair. Real repair. That's the secret to a healthy attachment, healthy relationship. Not being perfect, just being able to say sorry. And then being okay with the feelings, right, that come up. Letting the child be hurt. Say, ouch, that hurt, mom. I do it all the time. My kids are very aware now. So the other day, my son, he's 15 now, and he was like, ouch, mom, that was passive aggressive. And I was like, oh, you're right, that was. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I did that. That was passive aggressive. You're right. And here's my actual vulnerable feeling underneath. I was hurt. That's why I hurt you. Right. And I'm sorry. So I can own it. And then we move on and we're repaired and we're good. Instead of defending, deflecting, blaming, finding some excuse, running away from it. I just leaned in and I said, oof, you're right. You got me. Sorry about that. So that's where we want to get to, not perfection, just that we repair whenever we don't get it right the first time. So that's it for now. We're out of time. So Myrna, or going back to Lisa, whoever's taking it back. Yes.
So first of all, thank you so much. There was so much insight. It's so much that we can learn and deepen our understanding, and such a wealth of information and experience. So thank you, Kendra. It was awesome. And thank you for all your questions. They were very good too. And our next meeting will be on March 9, on Saturday. And Myrna you will say about that?
Yes, share my screen. Yeah, so in January, we had Yona Johnson, who gave us a presentation about Reimagine Your Home. So she's going to give us part 2. She's going to guide us to understand what's in looking at your home, what's your area that you need to focus on, aesthetics, order, and function. But she also wants to include the importance of learning to ask for help and support. And so she would like us, if you have someone in your life, a daughter, daughter-in-law, an aunt, a cousin, a friend, somebody that you would like to experience this workshop together, to invite them. And don't worry if you don't have someone. We will just pair up and role play and practice. And we'll also be celebrating International Women's Day on that day.
Thank you, Myrna. That we are looking forward for the next month. And I want to thank you, everybody. We are out of time. So we want to keep the time that to respect your Saturday. So thank you for attending and have a wonderful month. And we are looking forward to see you next month.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, thank
now.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Great job,
All right.
Sandra. Let me stop the